Hello, and welcome to North American Cultural Laboratory's Periodic Table Talk. I'm Lisa Black, and I'm here with actor-writer Megan Hill. Hi, Megan.
Hi.
And NACL co-founder and theater doctor, Brad Krumholz. Hi, Brad.
Hello.
So my mission is to find out what you did last summer. So last summer, for posterity, was 2020, the COVID pandemic, lockdown, shelter in place, most everything canceled summer, except for civil unrest and protests and the approaching presidential election. But today is April 10, 2021. And I'm guessing that it was about a year ago that you two were locked down in small New York City spaces at the epicenter of the pandemic for months, and you got an idea about what to do in 2020 summer. So can you tell me about that? Megan, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. We had been in our Brooklyn apartment, and luckily, very luckily, we live in very close proximity to Prospect Park. And Brad had just gone through having to cancel the NACL summer season, which I'm sure he can talk more about too. And we were thinking about the space and what we could do with it, because it seemed like such a shame for that wonderful space to stay empty for the summer, but also we're in the middle of a pandemic. So what do? Does it just stay empty? And so we went on a lot of long walks talking about possible ideas, and we came up with a lot of different ideas, and none of them felt right. And the thing that Brad introduced was coming up with something that had a lot of nuance and thoughtfulness and safety. And so originally we were thinking, well, maybe we get a group of artists together to quarantine and then rehearse and put on a distanced show outside. And especially the collective trauma I think everybody was feeling at that time, it just didn't feel right. And for me, I just felt like a panic of like having to produce something artistically.
Yeah.
And so then we came up with the idea of inviting a group of artists and activists up to the theater in small pods. And each pod would last about 3 weeks. People would quarantine before, get tested before. The first week at the house, people would stay distanced inside with masks, and then outside they could have masks off but distanced. And then once that week was over, then for the final 2 weeks, people could just commune. And the main thing was just helping people get out of the city, so that there was no transaction. It was just, this is an invitation, come and spend this time how you need to or want to. And that was, I think, what we settled on, is feeling where we felt really good about it. And we felt like we had a safe plan in order. And we came up with a list of 25 people. And so it'd be 3 groups, maximum of 11 people. And then within that, we were like, it's not slots to be filled. So if people say they can't do it, they can't do it. And that just means the group that comes up in that first pod will be 4 people or 5 people. We're not looking for slots to fill. It's just, these are the people. And then whoever can do it can, and whoever can't. And that's it. Just to kind of
great.
It.
Great.
And so that's how we came up with the plan.
That sounds like a great plan. And leaping to the end of the summer, it worked. There was no transmission.
Yeah, I feel like we started thinking about stuff around this time last year, but we didn't come up with the actual plan, I think, until like early May. And then we started the invitations or collecting around like mid-May, end of May. Does that sound about right, Brad? Does that sound about right?
Everything you said just now sounded about right. It's great. I don't have to say anything. You got it.
You got everything. She started with, you had just canceled the season and for the theater.
Yeah. So that was horrible. because it was such an exciting season that we had planned. I mean, there were like, I don't even remember the number now. Megan has a much better memory
We had 18 groups.
yeah.
Wow.
Thank you. I had 18 groups or artists, like some were very small and some were a little larger, and I had set it up so for the entire 3 months of the summer, there would be multiple groups staying in the theater at the same time, and there would be sort of built-in exchanges and sharings between those companies. They would share the space with whoever was here, including me or Tracy if she was working with people, and that once a week or so, we would have these like community potlucks in which we would say, okay, we would sort of send out an email saying like, okay, this week in the laboratory we're showing these things, and it could be just a small scene that the group was working on, or it could be whatever they wanted to share.
Mhm.
And we'd have an evening of that, and people would come and bring food. And the idea was that they would come and feed us with food, and we would feed them with art. And
Oh,
it would be
okay.
the exchange, and we would have, we would just, it would be small and free, and and then after, and we would talk afterwards, and we would have however would best benefit the work of the artist is how we're going to organize it, and each week it would be different. And
Mhm.
it was just going to go through the entire summer like that. It was going to be glorious and nonstop and exciting. And then I had to pull the plug on the whole thing. And the people that I was in touch with were really, of course, understanding and sad. But I'm still in touch with them and seeing how things might be possible to do now or sometime in the future. Just try and keep this conversation going with them because they're all such amazing artists. The other thing I'll just add is just for the sake of giving sort of the lineage of credit. When I was in the midst of having to cancel all this stuff, I was talking to Tracy Broyles, who's the other artistic director of NACL, and she was like, "Well, what if we just got a bunch of our friends together, people like that we're used to collaborating with, and and create some kind of performance event with just them there."
Mhm.
And I was like, please, Tracy, I can't think about this. I'm in the middle right now of just canceling everything. I'm totally heartbroken. I can't imagine anything. So let's just talk about it later. And then we didn't really talk about it too much more than that because I was still in mourning. But then, as Megan said, Megan and I started going on these long walks, and I was like, oh, what if we could do that? What if we could come up with a performance project, and and we would part of the performance project would be figuring out what could be possible in a pandemic for performance and creation, and maybe the performance that we made would be be devised based on stuff that we were thinking about now, and like maybe we'd create a big plexiglass wall between the stage and the audience, or we could figure out some way, or maybe it would be outdoors, or but then as Megan said, it's just like the whole prospect of that seemed too insane, and we didn't
Overwhelming.
virus. It was
Yeah,
overwhelming psychically
I
and
was like,
physically.
yeah, I was like, when you say that, everything in me shuts down. I was just like, I can't imagine, because I think also at this time, we were dealing with a lot of performance moving into the Zoom sphere,
Mhm.
which, I was just in awe of how people were able to like switch and do that. But for me, I was like, and a lot of like amazing interesting work was happening, but also I was just like, for a lot of artists I knew, it was they were going through the exact opposite of just feeling like in a state of mourning, um
Yeah.
and also for me, I just felt like the world is asking us to stop. They're asking us to stop, and we should just stop and we should listen. And when we started making it less about product and what to make, it really felt like, okay, the thing we're hearing is that people need to get out of the city. They need a place to just like relax and almost pretend like there isn't a pandemic or where they can just come and be out of the city for a little bit and
The
breathe.
sanctuary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And to be outside, because I would think of you in the big buildings and just like going into the elevator in your building, you would go down the stairs no matter what floor you lived on, just to have,
just having to
here on the
map.
West Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kept thinking about everyone in city in these buildings and how you would be stuck in your little apartment.
Yeah.
And I actually did think of I'm here on the West Coast, and I thought of NACL being abandoned and empty. And I was heartbroken. And then when I learned that it wasn't, I felt a lot better. So I'm glad that the sanctuary was there and you made something happen. What were you gonna say?
Oh yeah, I think that like it really was trying to make it a sanctuary, and we really stressed to people. We said even though most everyone invited up is some form of artist, there is no expectation that work or creation needs to be done while you're up here. If you want to come up and just stay in your room and binge watch your favorite TV show, great. If you do want to go into the theater and use it every day, great. If you just want to sit out on the porch and read a book, great. This time is your time, and there's no parameters of how you need to spend it.
And people did use the space. People used it, but only when they wanted to, and if they wanted to. There were a lot of people who just did not. A lot of people just did work on the porch of the house. But I went into the theater every morning and resumed my physical and vocal and creative training, sort of combined with physical therapy, because I recently had spine surgery and I needed to figure out a way to learn my new body and see what it could do. And so it was really healing for me that way too, like in psychically and physically, it was a very healing time. And I would go in there, every day. And then when I was done, someone else would go in for a couple of hours, and then so there was always like a stream of people going and coming inside of the theater. And it was occasionally we would even go in there together. And that was the weirdest thing for me, and the most kind of exciting thing about the summer was that it kind of felt like we were in this weird alternate reality, because we just came from a few months in the city during this, and all of a sudden, so we know what it's like, and then we're like, all of a sudden we're hanging out here, and we had the first big unmasking we did when we were like, okay, we've been here for a week, we've been wearing masks. Can we take our masks off now? And we always checked with everybody to make sure everybody was okay, and the rule was that the most uncomfortable person won. So if somebody was super uncomfortable with something, then everybody else would sort of like say, okay, that's cool. We will do what we need to do in order to make you not feel horrible and make you feel okay. And then it got to a point where everybody was like, yeah, let's do it. So we took our masks off, we hugged. And it was just so it was so exciting. And then we spent the way that it worked out for the rest of the summer is that the majority of time was spent masked off. And we were just hanging out, and we would go into the theater, and I was doing partner acrobatics with Becca Blackwell,
Kitty?
And it was just so exciting and almost taboo, and we couldn't really tell people about it, because even though we felt it was totally safe and we were taking all the precautions, there's so much explanation that needs to go along with that when you're talking to people who are concerned about you and concerned about the fate of the world, and also are concerned about all these people who are flaunting the practices for not spreading COVID, in the in other parts of the country and even around here. It's there are a lot of people who are resistant, the anti-maskers and all that. And we're no, we're following the rules, but we're found a way to be able to do this, and it was such a relief and a release.
I still haven't experienced that, even though I'm fully vaccinated. I haven't, the people I would hug are not yet fully vaccinated. So I still have hugged no one in well over a year. It's really strange. What were you going to say, Megan?
Yeah, we had some people that came up that were like, this is the first time I've hugged someone in 5 or 6 months.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So I can't believe you were doing acrobatics and were we doing contact improv with Becca?
Not contact improv, partner acrobatics. So
what's that?
We were doing Becca would bass, because Becca's very strong, and I would fly, and so we were doing everything from just basic airplane to candlestick. By the end of it, I was doing we were doing two highs, in which I was standing on Becca's shoulders. And
standing upright,
standing upright, 12 feet tall, on the ground, and I was on their shoulders, and my feet were on their shoulders, and I was just up there, and it was super scary. And then I came down and jumped off. I did a handspring. which I used to do all the time, but I was really scared of doing with my back. And,
Yeah.
I did all sorts of stuff, all sorts of like just supporting each other and like flying. And it was very exciting and crazy making.
So you not only got this reacquainted with your body, but you also had the liberation of doing this in the middle of the pandemic, where you were in a bubble, like the NBA bubble, where
Yes.
everyone was tested and all the safety protocols, and the game looked like the way
Yeah.
it always was.
Yeah, exactly. And the the strange thing that has continued to be strange is that there are all these recommendations by the CDC and the World Health Organization, and they're so inconsistent and
Changing.
they change. And
Yeah.
so we were going with what we knew to be the best advice, but not months before that, they had done that whole thing about don't wear masks. Please don't wear masks. And then all of a sudden we're supposed to wear masks. And they really screwed the pooch on that one, because they set up a circumstance where people all of a sudden mistrusted what they were saying. And it's understandable, like something and then you learn something else and you change what you're supposed to do. But not only were things changing, but they were also dishonest about that, because it turns out that the reason they didn't want people to wear masks is because they were afraid that none of the medical professionals would have them and that they would all go missing because everyone would take them. And so they just lied. And so rightly so, the American people were just like, no way. But anyway, so there's this like constantly revised understanding of like what's okay.
Right.
And now, like even just the other day, we got like the announcement saying that, it's possible that there have been no confirmed cases of transmission through surfaces. And that
Possible.
it's very likely that transmission is possible through surfaces. So it's like, okay, so all of that sanitizing that everybody was doing and going a little crazy doing it, turns out wasn't really necessary.
Yeah. Okay. It might have been, though. We had to do it while we had to do it.
Exactly. That's the thing. You have to do it while you're doing
You
it.
have to. And
We were following those things, when people were up here, thinking, okay, well, let's hope we're safe. Because there's always like a little bit of concern about like, is this actually okay? But we were okay. And I think we were okay partly because of luck, but mostly because of rigor.
Yeah, because we and all of the people we knew and we trusted, and everybody knew that it was all people that had been incredibly safe. I mean, some people hadn't even really left their apartments at all, like barely even for walks. That's how stringent they were being before they even got the invitation. So it was like, we knew that the people, our friend Flacco, he's the primary caregiver for his grandmother. And he's like, I'm not gonna fuck around. He's like, she needs to be safe,
Right.
So everybody were already like incredibly cautious beforehand, then did the quarantine and low risk activities before they came. Along with the tests. And it was interesting because then as the summer progressed, when the first group came up, it was when there was like the backlog of tests. So people were having to get their tests way earlier and then really quarantine. And then with the second group, the rapid testing had started and was becoming more readily available. Mm-hmm. And so that was really interesting, because then we had some people that were able to get rapid test and like got their results like the day before they came. So that made it easier to really, it was like, well, so
it's almost as if your confidence built over the course of the summer just because of circumstances.
And also I think we were tracking the numbers too, and it was when we were on the downswing. And so also when people were coming up, it was when a lot of the numbers were pretty low. So then we were also feeling pretty confident about that, because we're like, I think if the numbers had been surging, and we were ready to scrap it at any moment, where we're like, okay, if someone gets sick, if someone, or if the numbers are just like through the roof, or the test result, like we might have to scrap it. And so we were all ready for that as well. But it did seem like timing worked out in terms of the numbers being really low, and at the time that we were doing it too.
Yeah. So in terms of the no strings, no pressure to create something by the end. So Brad, you went into the space every day and worked on training and healing and vigorous calisthenics and partnered activity. And for you, Megan, were you more on the porch? Were you jumping in the lake? Did you go in the theater? Were you writing? What was your journey like creatively, or dancing
Yeah.
around creativity during the summer?
I was pretty much I was on the porch a lot, and or in the lake a lot, or in the river a lot. Um, for me, the first few months of the pandemic when we were still in Brooklyn, I just felt so at bay and so creatively at bay, and I just couldn't bring myself. I couldn't read. I couldn't. My attention span was just slim to none. Um, and so the walks in the park when we came were like such a savior for me every day. And then when we got up there, I was open to that I might be able to be creative, and I just wasn't. And I really like avoided the theater and going into the theater, because I think there was part of it that just felt like too painful in a way. But and so I kind of was like, well, I'll just play the role of hostess. This gives me purpose. This gives me like taking care of, making sure people are okay, like that's, and then, and also try not to judge what I was going through because we have some of the people that came up that were like, I mentioned Flacco before. He's like a workaholic, and he just like always got like, I mean, it's just so incredible to watch his, like, he's constantly working, he's constantly has something, and his wheels are, and I was like, I wish I had an ounce of that, but also I was like, you're just not there. Like, you can't, everyone is in different places.
Exactly.
And then, yeah. And so, and as the summer went, I slowly started getting it. Like I found, I was like, okay, I can't really read full books. So I'll start reading short stories and essays and stuff like that. So I think the best thing was I just got back into reading again.
Yes. I read so many novels.
Yeah. But I do think there's a performance artist named Mrs. Smith here in the city, and he recently posted something that said the pandemic is not a residency. And and that was like so freeing to hear, because I think a lot of artists have felt like, if we get out of this and I haven't created anything, like, this pressure that they still needed to be creating and making stuff and doing stuff.
Yeah. I have a friend, a prolific musician and inventor, and he plays organ and invents machines and sound machine things that he plays all simultaneously. And like he said, he got really low, and just the pandemic just crushed him. And he's a very dynamic, nonstop creative person. And so he started listening to his vast collection of LPs on organ music that spans, the entire 20th century. Wow. And he just started listening to it. And then now he just made a podcast, and it's just him playing the people he likes on organ. And it was really fun. I listened to it. So he kind of just relaxed and found the way. So he didn't have a residency in organ music of the 20th century, but that was sort of, as an organ player, that was sort of his way out. So that's really interesting.
At the very beginning of the pandemic, when we were still in the city, I thought to myself, God, I'm gonna be here a lot. I'm like, because I teach at Hunter College, and so all of my classes were now in my apartment, on my computer screen, and so I didn't commute back and forth, and like I felt like I was gonna have like all of this time. Aside from, I was wrong, because it's like I'm busier now than I ever was, because Zoom has encouraged people to just have no boundaries about when work can stop and your life can begin, and like, because everything's in the same space. But at the beginning, I thought, I'm going to see if maybe this publisher who I had contact with a couple of years ago through this other book, which I think, Lisa, you copy edited this article for me, the one about ensemble collaboration for.
How long ago was that?
It was, I don't know, it was like 2008 or something.
Okay.
But you were here, and you copy edited this. There was a chapter in this book called Encountering Ensemble that I wrote.
Okay.
the publisher of that was Bloomsbury Press, Methuen in England. And anyway, I had a contact with them, and I wrote to them. I said, "Hey, you think you might be interested in publishing my dissertation as a book?" And they said, "Well, maybe. Why don't you send us a proposal?" So I did, and long story short, 8 months later, I got a book deal, and
Oh my God.
so now I'm actually like I used those 8 months of like figuring out like writing proposals and writing back and forth to them and having peer reviews and all of that to actually like make this thing a reality. So now I've got this book that I
Oh
have
my
to
God.
finish the first draft of by the end
Where's
of
the champagne?
it's coming. Champagne's coming.
So the pandemic was you getting a residency, or you did have a residency and getting your book published. So
Yeah, I mean it was more of like a
that's
bureaucratic.
silly. But
It was
that's fantastic.
it was a bureaucratic back and forth mostly, but it was just like, okay, what do I need to do in order to make this book publishing thing possible? And now I could dig into the actual doing of it. But yeah, it was productive. So for me, like I was a mix. I was a mix of like being super productive in these weird ways, and also just like swimming up here more than I've ever swam up here. Because normally when I'm I'm at the theater right now. I'm in the living room. Normally when I'm here, I'm just working all the time, and I don't even make it across the street to the lake. Everyone else is swimming, and I'm like, I'll join you, and I just never did. But this time I was swimming all the time, and it was great. But I still managed to get things done, and I don't want to say like there was no pandemic. Sorry, I got to I keep shaking my table by accident.
You're a table shaker. We're finding out. This is a periodic table talk because you keep your table periodically still.
That's right.
Some people are salt shakers. You're a table shaker.
Table salt shaker.
Mana Sariba, if you're good at when you're gesturing, go to. I whacked my ring against the table.
You probably have more things you want to ask us about other than like swimming or whatever. But
Well, swimming, caretaking. Did you? Oh, I know what I really wanted to ask about, because of course the time is going faster than expected. But how were the meals? Did you have great meals?
We did. Actually, it was interesting because Brad was like, because so much of the culture when you're up at NACL with the residency is like these big group meals. And so Brad was like, I think we should do like the big, and I was like, I don't think we should. I think everybody needs to be on their own. And if people want to just grocery shop on their own, or eat what they want, or have a private meal with their partner or a friend, or like, let's just keep it loose. And so it ended up being this like really nice blend of people doing their own thing, but about twice a week or more, we would have these big group meals, or sometimes people would be cooking at the same time. So everyone would still eat together, but be eating different meals.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it was interesting. That had never happened before up here. Like Megan said, usually it's just like everyone just eats together. I mean, at least for the big meals, not for breakfast. But this time it was really more varied, and it just felt like a really natural flow. And people really felt like, you know what? I'm going upstairs now. I'm going to my room. I'm going to go hang out. We also set it up so that nobody was within 2 rooms of each other. So there were 12 bedrooms in the house. And what we did was like on the second floor, we like person here, and then next bedroom empty, and then person there, next bedroom empty, and then person there. That's the way we said it. They weren't even all that full. But what we were also able to do was to say, okay, person over here, there's actually 2 rooms across the hall from each other. And they took both of those rooms. So they had one room for their sleeping room, and the other room they were used for Zooming, or for reading, or for writing, or studio, or yoga, or whatever they wanted to do in the house if they didn't want to go to the theater. And that it was a whole different vibe for this time than it normally is up here.
So this whole no strings attached, no transaction, no end product, no big presentation. It seems like a flow appeared and things just sort of happened. And
it did.
Was there any sharing of things, like sharing of writing or sharing of anything at all?
No,
or no?
Yes.
Wait, was there?
Yeah. So there was one when Flacco was here, he kept on saying,
listen to this. No.
He kept on saying, yo, I need to see what you're doing in there every day. I need to see what you're doing in there. And I said, okay, well, maybe you can come in. And I was like, I would prefer it if you saw what I was doing and I saw what you were doing. But, if you want, you can just come in and then we can talk afterwards. And so he came in one day, and that was a little bit of a sharing, and then we talked afterwards, and he took notes, and it was really nice. And then his partner was a choreographer, and she was going into the theater every day, and so he told her that she should check out what I was doing, and I arranged with her to do a sharing. So I showed her what I was working on, and then she showed me what she was working on, and then afterwards we talked and sort of, just shared notes, as it were.
Oh, and then
How-
David Perez, he's a stand-up comedian, and he had like a Zoom performance. So that was fun because the night he had the Zoom performance, we were like, he was going to do it in the theater, and we're like, that's so great. And then we're like, can we watch it? So it was, for him, it was great because he got to have this like mini audience while
live audience.
Because he had been saying like it's so difficult doing these comedy Zoom shows because it's just like you talking into the camera and you're not getting the crowd response that you're used to. So so he got to
That's
have
excellent. I can't imagine doing comedy with no idea if there was any reaction.
Yeah.
It seems impossible, but that's
Oh,
awesome.
and another thing about like the no strings attached is something that we also put in terms of creation is also there is no obligation to be social.
Ah, okay.
Because it is easy to get like sucked in of like, oh, everyone's on the porch hanging out talking, do I need to be there? And it's like, if you just want to be in your room, like that's okay, and you don't need to apologize for it, because there's also this need to like say sorry, I'm not feeling social, and it's like, nope, wherever you are is where you are.
Oh, that's good. That's lovely. Did anything really surprise you over the course of the summer? In any respect at all? No surprises.
I mean, I think the whole world was a surprise.
Everything was so new.
Well, every day too, just everything happening with the Trump administration. It was like waking up and being like, what fresh hell is this?
Yeah.
You know?
There you go.
It was like, wow, just when you think, and so I think it kind of felt like maybe the surprise was really, it did feel like we were able to create this little haven of a bubble.
Yeah.
For a finite amount of time, but
it sounds wonderful.
Yeah, I think that I think that the surprise element is like one that is constantly occurring for me, which is like every phase that we get to, I'm surprised at how, even if it seems really like a crazy moment or a really daunting possibility that we're encountering, I'm constantly surprised at how easy it is, it seems, for us to react to it and to adapt to it. And so like we had come from a couple months of like really intense feeling cooped up, and the whole quarantine thing for the March and April and May. And then in June we came up here, and then it was so weird to encounter these people, but then really within moments, with either actual moments or like, okay, in a day. Now all of a sudden everything felt like, oh, this is normal, and this is good, and this is okay. And then we go back to the city and be like, oh my God, we have to do this other thing. So like the adaptability thing is constantly surprising to me. And even now, like I went to my family Seder a couple weeks ago, and everybody in my family was either vaccinated or already had COVID. and so like everybody was there, and it wasn't a huge group, but it was like we were indoors and we were eating, and it was my family, and we hadn't seen each other I mean, I'd seen my parents out in their back porch. Megan and I would go down there and see them and sit like 10 feet apart from them and wipe everything down. And, like, it was just crazy. But then all of a sudden, like, we're inside and we're having Seder, and it's just normal. It's just like we're back at normal Seder time, and we're making, everybody's cutting each other off and being rude and funny, very, very Jersey Jewish. And it was like, it was the thing that was so surprising was how commonplace this momentous thing was. And I'm constant, that keeps happening. I continue to be surprised by how like things that should be really crazy are actually like not, and ultimately not a big deal.
Yeah, a good friend of mine who's an ER doctor, and who we actually like consulted with her a bunch, like, and we would double check with things with her, would be like, okay, is this crazy? Like, and she would kind of like be like, no, I think it looks like you guys are checking all the boxes. But when I've talked to her about like just what the world, will, I mean, there are certain, I always say like when the world opens up, because I don't know what, there is no such thing as normal anymore, or what normal wasn't great.
Yeah.
But in terms of like interactions, and are we going to be like, will theaters be able to have audiences that aren't wearing masks? And she always says, when you look at pictures from the Roaring 20s, no one's wearing a mask.
That's right.
And she's like, people want people want to get back to the way they used to socialize. They don't want those barriers. And so I think how adaptable how quickly we're able to switch into the mode we were in before. Although I think sometimes there's a little bit of a buffer. I've talked with some friends where it's like, you feel feral, like talking to seeing some people again, like, how do I do this? And then within a few minutes, it's fine, but it's
you
like,
figure it out.
Yeah.
You figure it out. So what would you say about the pandemic itself, the experience in the summer with the pods, how you can carry forward into your own personal creative work? And also, if you want, in terms of how you're going to guide NACL going forward, Brad, but either of you, mostly starting with your personal creativity, how could you envision it impacting your future work? Or if at all, or who knows? Or just like, however you want to answer that question of impact and moving forward. No strings.
You want to go first, Megan?
It's a really good question. I mean, I think this has been a time, I mean, especially for theater, I mean, for everything, but since theater is the world I'm in, it's what my closest proximity to it. I mean, I hope that this time has been used, especially for institutions, to use it as a time of reflection and, how we can build a more ethical and equitable world and the way we treat artists. And so I think I have a lot of fears going forward, because I think it's going to become apparent very quickly who's taken the time and who's doing the work and who has not. And my fear is that a lot less institutions or people are doing the work, and just going to slip back into business as usual, or exacerbate bad habits will be exacerbated from before, like especially with like live performance. And there was already this pressure for theaters sometimes to have like star names, and like, we got to get a star in there to sell tickets. And now I'm like, now that it's been closed for, it's shut down for over a year, are we going to go back and will that be exacerbated? Or will it be, no, we have an incredible community of artists here. So yeah, I don't know. I think for me, it's shifted. I realized, because I write, and I couldn't write anything for theater. I couldn't imagine anything for theater, and anything I tried to write for theater just felt like, what's the point? It's shut down. And when it opens up again, we're going to be in such a different space. Like, how will what I write now be applicable? So I started taking writing classes, and shifted into writing personal essays and short stories. And that's been creatively really great. So I hope I continue to write in those formats, and and also to switch my process around, where I always think about things theatrically, and when I write, I think about things in theater and in the world of theater. So I create the world, but it's imagined in a theater.
Yes, I understand.
So writing short stories opens it up, where I feel like, oh, I want to change my process now. Or maybe I start with a short story where I really imagine the world, flesh out the world, and then I adapt it into a script, so that I can really imagine the fullness of that world, and then switch it into a theatrical format.
We have to talk separately, because that's exactly what I've been doing.
Oh, really?
So I
Oh,
wanna
cool.
talk, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have to. Sorry.
The short story that I'm getting published, he was like, I saw that you were friends with the playwright and all your dialogue, I could tell that you had a theater background, so I don't know.
That's
I
But
love it.
this is not about me.
Sure, it is. It's about all of us.
But yeah, let's talk.
Uh,
Okay, so for you, creatively, or however you want to answer that.
Me?
You, Brad.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I could go on for probably about an hour about the different
Okay.
ways, and I'm not going to, but um, I I'll say this. So NACL was already undergoing a series of reflections about,
Mhm.
we're going to be 25 years old next year, and so we were already thinking about
Okay,
it,
go
right?
I,
ahead. It
oh,
was a long, long time ago.
Uh, so we were thinking about like, okay, what are we doing? What do we need to do? What's best for us to do? What's the way forward for us? Like not. It started with like what's next, but then we were like, there's a lot of what next, and then we realized that we need to gain a lot more clarity about all of our essential sort of what we're calling the mission, vision, and values of the organization to really clearly articulate them, because we realize that we kind of know what they are. We've known what they are, but we never really had it very clear. And we realized that moving forward, it would be really beneficial for us on a lot of levels to clarify that.
Mhm.
So we started undergoing these series of conversations with people that have had, like yourself, like you, Lisa, but also others, like 20 or so different artists and non-artists even, that have had a vested interest in NACL over the years, have come here, have been involved, to really get a sense of what people are thinking and feeling and what their sense of NACL is and what NACL could be, and just to really hear all of the different viewpoints. And we're moving forward on that, and we'll move to a strategic plan based on those conversations, and we're doing that really soon, and it's really exciting. But the reason I bring that up partly is to say, like, we're still figuring out like where things are going to go for NACL, and obviously the pandemic regulations are going to be a part of that, and we're going to have some programming this summer that we're still figuring out. But in one of these conversations, there was the series of small conversations. One of the questions that we asked everybody to ask for themselves and answer was something about what's crucial. Like what is crucial moving forward, or something like that. And then also something, it was like that. And we were also asking people to think about like, what's something from the pre-pandemic times that you realize now that you miss so much that you really don't want to have to do without in the future. Okay. And so for me, like there was like a combination answer for both of those in one of these sessions. And it had to do with liveness and bodies. Mm-hmm. And so I think that I'm really concerned about this. I'm really concerned about the presence and participation of live bodies in actual proximity for the future movement, the moving forward of of theater. And there's this conversation that's going on a lot because of all this Zoom and streaming theater about like, at first it was like, oh, everybody hates Zoom theater and streaming theater, because it's not live and blah, blah, blah. And then that kind of started transforming. And then it started to get to the point where people are saying, stop trying to define, is this theater, is it not theater, and just allow for like the fact that this is happening and see what it can become and see what it is. You don't have to label it and all of that. And I was okay with that. I was okay with like that whole thing. But then it got to the point where there was an article in the New York Times last week, and it's a thorny issue, and I don't want to weigh in too heavily on it right now because we have some limited time and it's complex.
Yeah.
There was an article in the New York Times about, it was written by a woman with a disability, and it was about how Zoom theater and streaming theater opened up a whole world and access to theater that she had never had before. And so she was saying, and then there were a lot of people like on Twitter who were saying, hey, look at this article. This article is really great. We need to pay attention to this moving forward, that theater and Zoom theater and streaming theater can actually be a part of the theatrical world that allows people who don't have access for lots of reasons, because of disability or because of location or
Right.
of money, all of these things. It's a way for people to gain access to the theater. And I love the idea of access. But I have to say, probably controversially, that, and I know that Megan and I spoke about this the other night, we actually disagree on this point. But my view is access to what? Because people say, oh, well, access to theater. You have access to theater. And I say, no, you don't. You have access to a video of theater. And anyone who has ever, for example, submitted a video sample for adjudication in a grants panel or a festival or whatever, everybody who's ever sat in those panels can always, just common knowledge that those videos can get a sense of something about that work, but you never really get you never know what the work is like from a video. And
Right.
I've had to view those a million times, and I always know that what I'm watching will only get me so far, and I can judge certain things about that. But in order to really understand what the performance is, I have to be there in person. It's like there's a world over here and there's a world over here, and this one of the videos signals to this one over here a little bit, but they hardly overlap at all. There's like a very, very thin overlap of Venn diagram. And I think that people disagree with me about that.
That's okay.
But my feeling is like very strongly that that theater is not just about storytelling, or I should say, storytelling is not just about storytelling. That storytelling is and live storytelling is as much or more about what is happening between the bodies inhabiting a space together as it is about the story that I feel is more of a vehicle to allow those bodies to do things. And those bodies are moving and behaving in very tiny ways and big ways. And the voices are also doing things with that are voices are very fully embodied. Yeah. And there's actual sonic vibration that is affecting the bodies in the space. You know, all these studies about when audiences get together, their heartbeats synchronize as they're watching a show. Like there's all of this stuff that's happening live that the story allows, the storytelling, the event of storytelling allows these things to happen. And so you can't just say, from my point of view, you can't just say, oh, well, if they have access to storytelling, then it's fine. It's like, well, okay, it is fine if you just acknowledge what it is, but we need to really have more conscious understanding and attention to what is being lost. And so this is a long-winded answer for me to say, like, that thing that is potentially sacrificed or lost when you're doing the kind of theater that emerged in pandemic, the Zoom theater and the streaming theater, for me personally, is extraordinarily important and is essential to all of the work I've ever committed myself to as an artist and as a scholar. And so that's something that moving forward, I need personally to find a way to emphasize and to promote and to, I don't know, to understand and to help people understand that it's that embodied nature of everything is just, it's just crucial to our existence, in my opinion. And I just want to go for it.
Beautiful. And I think that happened for you in the theater this summer.
Yeah. I mean, I was mostly myself, but yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're almost out of time. And those were very varied and beautiful answers. And it was such a pleasure for me to find out what you did last summer. And
now you know.
And actually, when you were explaining how everyone was staggered, or the people that were a couple had 2 rooms, but they were across from each other, I flashed back to the last time we worked together on Spirits of Lakewood House, and our haunted rooms were right across the hall from each other. And so I missed that. Huh?
Your valise.
Red or otherwise. There was no valise. Red or otherwise. Okay, one quick last fast question. So at NACL, there's this guest book that you have to sign every time you leave. And I doubt that you guys do that. I don't know. But if you did, or if you would, at the end of the summer, when you left from all the pandemic pods or however long you stayed, what would you jot in the 100-year-old guest book?
Oh, Lisa.
That was the question I didn't give you at the tech.
I didn't get any questions at tech.
No, we didn't get any.
What did you do last summer? What
So
would you?
I never write in that book. I've never once written in the guest book. And we have, it's full, and we did it all summer, and we really I'm like a guest book Nazi. I always make sure that everybody signs that guest
You're
book.
not answering the question. Move to strike is non-responsive.
So, but my answer is that I would write, this is the first time I'm writing in this guest book.
Touche. I'm fucking God. Okay.
I think mine would be like read as a bad like yearbook entry where it's just like, thanks for the memories. XXO, Megan.
Excellent. And it's always like your ride is honking the horn. Sign the guest book.
I think that, that people oftentimes write like in the formulation of thank you NACL or thank you Brad and Tracy and, Megan for blah, blah, blah. And, it's always very beautiful and heartfelt. And, but that's the format sometimes. And so I would probably write like, thank you NACL for allowing me to be a guest in my own house or something like that. And I would also maybe write it like, thank you to all those people who were NACL this summer. All of the guests who were here kind of made it their own homes. And so I would maybe want to write a note to NACL, but to those particular people who like were NACL during that time. And I was the guest. It's not really going to work out that way, but I could formulate it like that, and it would be true.
Isn't there some language where guest and host is the same word? Is it Italian?
Oh.
Or did I make that up?
I don't know, but
Someone
I like it.
told
I'll
me
take
as
it.
a lot. What?
I like it. I'll take it.
Anyway, I'm glad that you were a guest at NACL.
Yeah.
Theater Space.
And we were your guests today.
Thank you for joining me on the West Coast. What? We're getting a note? OSPT. Ospiti.
Ospiti.
Ospiti. Okay. Ospiti. Thank you for being Ospiti with me. And I can't wait to see you in the Catskills.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you either. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thank you. Great.
I loved it.
Also just nice to see your face.
Likewise.
Okay.
And scene. Cut.
Ciao.
Scene. Curtain.